All right, everyone, settle in. If we really want to understand why we do the things we do, we have to look back. And I mean way, way back. Not to our grandparents, not even to the Roman Empire, but to the world that actually forged our DNA, the world of the hunter-gatherer. For something like 95% of human history, this was us. So today, we're going on a little anthropological journey to unlock the secrets of our Stone Age minds. Let's dive in. It all kicks off with a puzzle that I'm sure you're all familiar with. You know the scene. It's late, you're standing in front of the fridge, and even though you know you shouldn't, you just can't resist that tub of ice cream. So why? Why does our brain betray us like that? Well, as we'll see, evolutionary psychology tells us the answer isn't here in our modern world, but in the one we left behind thousands and thousands of years ago. And this just nails the core problem, doesn't it? It's what we call an evolutionary mismatch. Just picture a Stone Age woman who stumbles upon a tree loaded with ripe figs. In her world, a world of constant scarcity, the smartest thing to do is to eat every single one right then and there, before a troop of baboons gets to them first. See, our DNA is still wired for that savanna, but we're living in a world of high-rises and overstuffed refrigerators. Some anthropologists have a great name for this, the gorging gene theory. It's basically this deep primal instinct to load up on high-calorie food whenever you find it, a trait that was, for millennia, an absolute lifesaver. The only problem is that that exact same instinct is what makes a whole pint of Ben & Jerry's magically disappear in one sitting. Our biological software is running on a very, very old operating system. So this whole mismatch thing, it naturally leads to a much bigger question. What was life actually like before agriculture? What was this world that shaped our bodies and our minds? It's a world that's mostly hidden from us, and if we really want to understand ourselves, we need to try and peek behind that curtain. So, how did our ancestors organize themselves? Well, this is where it gets really interesting, because the experts are pretty divided. One school of thought imagines this ancient commune, where things like property and even parenting were a group effort. The whole band raised the kids. But then you have another camp that argues, no, the nuclear family and lifelong partnership have always been the bedrock of human society. And the reason for this huge debate? Well, it's because the evidence is just so incredibly thin. We have zero written records. Most of their stuff, which was probably made of wood or fiber, is just gone. We're looking at a past that's almost completely obscured by what historians call a curtain of silence. I mean, look at these hands. They're reaching out to us, but they can't actually tell us their stories. But from the few fragments we do have, a really surprising picture starts to take shape. And it's one that completely shatters our stereotype of the brutish, struggling caveman. It's a radical theory, and it's known as the original affluent society. Now take a look at this number, 35 to 45. What do you think that represents? This is the average number of hours a week that modern hunter-gatherers living in some of the toughest places on Earth spend on the essentials. Getting food and setting up camp. Just let that sink in for a second. They worked fewer hours than most of us do in our typical 40-plus hour work weeks. And on top of that, think of everything they didn't have to do. No dishes, no vacuuming, no mortgage payments, no emails to answer. They had way more leisure time than almost anyone in an agricultural or industrial society. And their diet was anything but boring. I mean, a typical peasant in ancient China might have eaten rice for breakfast, rice for lunch, and rice for dinner. A forager, on the other hand, might eat dozens of different kinds of foods in a single week. This incredible variety was their secret weapon. It protected them from the kind of malnutrition and starvation that plagued the first farming societies. And the proof is literally in their bones. When we look at the fossil evidence, ancient foragers were, on the whole, taller and healthier. They suffered from fewer infectious diseases than their farming descendants. And this, right here, is the foundation of that original affluent society theory. So, if that was the society, what did it take to be an individual within it? Well, to survive and thrive in that world, you needed an absolutely incredible breadth of knowledge and skill. It created what you might call the super forager. Now, this is a pretty bold claim, but the historian Yuval Noah Harari puts it bluntly. He argues that on an individual basis, ancient foragers were the most skilled and knowledgeable people in all of history. Now, that might sound like a wild exaggeration, but when you really look at what they had to know, it's pretty hard to argue with. Think about it. Today, we're all specialists. A computer engineer knows her code inside and out, but she relies on thousands of other specialists for her food, her shelter, her medicine. A forager couldn't do that. They had to be a generalist of the highest possible order. They carried a detailed mental map of their entire territory, an encyclopedic knowledge of plants and animals, and the physical skill to make tools, track prey, and move with the endurance of a marathon runner. So, be honest with yourself for a second. How many of us would actually last a week out there? That question really reveals this huge chasm of lost knowledge between us and our ancestors. Their minds were basically encyclopedias of practical survival, and they were updated every single day. But, and this is a really important but, we have to be very careful not to over-romanticize this period. For all of its so-called affluence, the forager world could be incredibly harsh, unforgiving, and, yes, violent. We have to look at the other side of the coin. Life expectancy was low, and that's largely because child mortality was devastatingly high. A simple broken leg could easily be a death sentence. And some of their social customs, well, they could be brutal. We know some groups, like the Ache of Paraguay, would sometimes abandon the elderly or sick. In some cases, they even practiced ritual infanticide or killed members who became too much of a burden on the band. And what about violence? Well, while some forager societies seem to have been quite peaceful, others were anything but. Just look at this chart. In one excavated site in the ancient Danube Valley, this first bar shows that a whopping 4.5% of all deaths were caused by human violence. Now look at the next bar. That's the 20th century, the century with 2 world wars and multiple genocides. The rate was 5%. Their world could be just as violent as our recent past. And that's really the challenge here. An image like this one is just profoundly ambiguous. I mean, what are we seeing? Is it a hunting accident, a shamanic vision, a murder? We simply don't know. It's like a Rorschach test. It often reveals more about our own modern assumptions than it does about their actual lives. So, what do we take away from all this? This really complex, contradictory picture of both affluence and brutality. What is the ultimate lesson from our deep, deep past? Well, the big lesson is this. There is no single natural way for humans to live. The sheer variety we see in the forager world, from communal living to monogamy, from peaceful bands to warlike ones, it proves that our biology isn't a rigid blueprint. It's more like a vast canvas for an incredible array of possibilities. This is what's known as the horizon of possibilities. The lives of our ancestors show us that all our current social structures, our nuclear families, our 9-to-5 jobs, our economic systems, none of them are inevitable. They are all, at the end of the day, cultural choices. And understanding that, well, it gives us a much broader perspective on the choices we're making right now. You know, our ancient programming is still in there. It's in our craving for sugar, in our social instincts, in the way we connect with the natural world. That forager mind is still whispering to us from deep inside our DNA. So the only real question left is, in this crazy modern world we've built for ourselves, what cultural choices will we decide to make now?